Hi, it's Madalen Ross, QVM Program Manager, and we're here to continue our series on marketing at QVM. Once again, I've got Peter Topping, who's going to take us through this session. And as per previous sessions, we're going to have a look at what our homework has been and how far you've progressed, and also give you a few new little jobs to do in this month of April. So Peter, a big welcome to you.
Thank you, Madalen.
And I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. So I'll just share my screen and to get started. Give it 1 second. So I'm assuming by now you can all see the screen. So Madalen, if you can give me a wave to make sure that we're all on the same page, that'd be great. Okay. So April already, and I know it's a busy month for everyone because we've got Easter and we've got Anzac Day and we've got school holidays and things like that. But you know, there's no reason to still not make sure that I'm giving you lots of homework. So I'm going to get straight into it. Obviously, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this again to SBMS and QVM. I enjoy doing it, and it's nice to download the knowledge that I've acquired over many years to people who it may actually help. So thank you.
Sorry, you were cutting out.
Basically, what I'm going to do is sum up the actions from March. Okay. So what I'm going to do is really sum up the actions for March, have a look at the Trader Bulletin because it's a really good month for posting and for opportunities to create social media content. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is currently the Google ecosystem because it's got confusing with the amount of products and possibilities that there are out there. And then I'm going to try and draw a little bit of definition between SEO and social media because that conversation has become increasingly blurred and mixed up. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the differences between the two streams and what they achieve. So it's a sort of bag of events. Normally I've talked about a single topic, and this time I'm going to talk about a range of topics. So I'll get right into it because there's quite a lot of content to cover, and hopefully at the end I'll take a few questions. If you need to interrupt me, by all means do so. In March I asked you to look at hashtags. And to try and develop a portfolio of hashtags that were relevant to your business. And I sort of broke it down into saying there was hashtags about your product or hashtags about your service. And then there were hashtags about your demographic. And then there were hashtags about your location. And then hashtags which you tried to then slip into a major campaign. So it's all about leveraging where you are. So what's your product or service? Who are you after? And where are you after? And obviously that's generally around Queen Vic, or it's generally around magnificent Melbourne, or it's generally around Visit Victoria or something like that. Those are the kind of location-based hashtags. And your product is going to depend on what business that you're involved in and what your product or service you're aiming to retail at that particular time. So I just said try and build a portfolio for use in social media and keep checking them. The other thing I asked you to really have another look at the Trader Bulletin and try and make use of the expense that the Queen Vic market goes to try and help you create content. I said that was important, and I sort of broke it down into about 4 reasons, right? Number 1 was getting on board. Really, it's about supporting the Vic market, which is where we do business, the City of Melbourne and Tourism Victoria. By using their hashtags, we can help them, which ultimately will help us because what we want is foot traffic. And they're trying to reactivate the city. They're trying to get the most amount of visitors to the market. Being in alignment with their campaigns, they've usually spent a lot of money researching what people are looking for, and they've usually built their campaigns around that. We're spending hundreds of dollars on advertising. In our Google AdWords campaigns, we're spending $18 a day, $25 a day. Some people are spending $40 a day. and things like that, they're spending millions, right? So we need to coattail in on their big effort. So that is really just leveraging their spend and tagging along. So it was important because it's a easy way to be seen, and it's an easy way to get your posts into a bigger balloon of people who might be our clients, and that is people visiting Melbourne, people coming back to the city, and people who are engaging with the campaigns made by large organisations. So the other thing I asked you to do was I asked you to look at your QVM and your My Business listing, as well as in that context a bit about your Facebook and Instagram. And I asked you to do that if you haven't done it for a while, and I asked you to do it about from a particular perspective. So when you look at your QVM or your My Business listing, does it tell the client where to find you online? People have moved online, so does it tell you where to find you online, right? Does the text say anything about your expertise, your trustworthiness, your product or your service? Okay, I gave some really good examples of people who've done it really well, like Bill's Farm and Bruce Goose and things like that. And project. So I think.
Sorry, Peter, you broke up a little bit there.
That they were the goal. Oh, sorry about that. Or they haven't said enough about what product or services that I now offer in the current era. The same needs to be done with the Google My Business. Does it say who you are, come and visit you? And lastly, does it link to your website and your other assets? So that was just really a bit of review homework. Have a look, see what it looks like, and make sure it's all up to date. So assuming that everyone has done all their homework and we're all up to date, right? When we look at the Trader Bulletin for April, it's actually a good addition, in my opinion. There's lots of content. And the question you need to ask yourself when you're saying, how can I get 2 or 3 posts out of the Trader Bulletin so I don't have to think about it, is to ask yourself, is there any social media content that's general? Is there any that's specific? And lastly, because of the time, how do I link my Ugg boots to Food and Wine, right? So those are the kind of 3 questions that you can think about when you look at the Trader Bulletin in April. And generally, it's the first 2 are how do you break down the Trader Bulletin to make it useful for yourself. You can write all your social media posts on one day. You can put aside an hour to do it, and then you can schedule them to appear over, the next week or the next 10 days or whatever. So you don't have to look for something to do every day. You can do it as a block and then schedule them to appear. So when you look at this week's content, there is lots of interesting things that are on there, and there's lots of stuff that we can use, right? So obviously there's the Ultimate Foodie Tour, there's the End of the Summer Night Market, and there's also a feature article obviously on Andrew's Bread Shop, and there's something about Man About Town, and there's various other bits of content that are available through that. So the ones that I looked at, which were most obvious for me, was the general content. And in the Trader Bulletin, there's a link to download a tile, and that tile is a perfectly formatted image that works on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. It fits into web pages, goes into EDMs, and that is what the Easter trading hours are. And then we use it, and you don't have to say much. It just says, thinking of coming to the market this Easter, here's the trading hours. It's good quality information that clients are interested in, allows them to plan their life. If they need to look back, they go, I know what the trading hours are. I saw it online. They'll come back to you and to your brand, right? So it's general engagement that you get with your client. It's a simple post. It's the world's easiest post. Download the tile, put it up. Everyone's interested. Doesn't matter what your product or service is. The other one was the Ultimate Foodie Tour. So you can invite people to come and visit you at the market and eat, and they should do it because it's world class, right? And what you can point to is the fact that the Ultimate Foodie Tour has been selected by Tourism Australia to feature in their new campaigns. So that Ultimate Foodie Tour is going to be on their international advertising in Asia. It's going to be on their advertising and promotion in Queensland and WA and New South Wales. And it's also going to be on all their internal hotel TV screens when clients come to Australia. And no matter what, I mean, come to Melbourne, no matter which hotel they're staying in. So why not link to it? It's a simple.
Yeah, it is a simple way. And if we go back a couple of slides as well, to David Mann's post that we've got.
Oh,
yeah, Man About Town. Now, I mean, yeah, that for me, that's the lowest hanging fruit, and it's easy to tag, to post that onto your Facebook page, and use tag Man About Town, use the hashtag Man About Town, because he's so popular and he's got so many followers that you might even get lucky, and he's an ambassador for Queen Vic Market. So you could get lucky and he might comment on your post, or he might even repost your post. So it's to be able to interact with others, that's sort of growing the relationship as well. And I'm sure that he or his team would like to see that we're actually doing something as well.
Yeah, so you'll get two things. You'll get reach, and you'll get and you'll provide something interesting. You'll get engagement from your clients, right? If he's got hundreds of thousands of followers or thousands of followers, and only 1 or 2% of them read your related content, it's still hundreds of people that you haven't had access to before. So you don't have a reason really not to do it, and it's an easy thing to do, to tag them and provide a bit of content, think about something interesting to say. So that's a really good point. QVM is paying for him to be an ambassador, and it's your responsibility to make use of him as an ambassador to get something for yourself out of it. He's doing work for QVM, but he's also doing work for you personally, and as long as you take advantage of that. So that's a good point. Thank you, Madalen. So the last one I was just going to get to was the simplest thing that you've got there in that trader bulletin is the little red tile, which has got a download link on it, which again fits perfectly on any form of social media, into any website, into any EDM, which is the still time to plan the market around the Food and Wine Festival. Right? It's just general engagement. Everyone's generally interested in food and wine. It's got great logos on it, Bank of Melbourne, City of Melbourne. So you're putting yourself into a space where there's really reputable brands. So come and visit us. There's still time to plan a trip. It's really about encouraging people to come down and associating yourself with a successful product and service that's there. So they were all things that were in the market, right? From that, we could have got a whole week's worth of social media posting, and then we could have put a couple of sales or product opportunities in there, and it would have made our social media content look good. It wouldn't have just been shoes, 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 or food, 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 buy, buy, buy. It's given us breadth. It's given us something interesting, and it's given our clients something informative. So that's really the objective when you look at trying to make use of those trader bulletin opportunities. I think that, given that it's Easter and Anzac Day, it's been a particularly good period where that content is available. So I'll move on from that opportunity. And the second thing that I just wanted to talk about this week was really just a bit about Google. And I've had a couple of conversations over the last few months where it all gets a bit confusing. So I thought what I might do is just talk about what I think is relevant in the Google suite of products to small businesses. So first of all, the company's no longer called Google, it's called Alphabet, but we all call it Google, and I'm going to continue to call it Google because no one knows what Alphabet is, right? So it is Alphabet, but we're going to say Google. The main issue that people get is they feel like they can't keep up with Google. And if you're one of those people, then my first point is you shouldn't feel alone. And the second point is that it's not you, it's them, right? The reason you can't keep up is that they keep changing the name of the product and they keep adjusting the services. And that is actually contrary to what a lot of companies do. And if you look at things like the Hyundai Elantra, the Commodore, you look at Ford Focus, the model changes, but they tend to keep the name the same, so the client relates. And even though the products look nothing like each other over years and years and years, it's the same with chips. In Australia, salted chips are blue, salt and vinegar chips are purple packets, chicken chips come in a green package. It doesn't matter what the brand is, it's just a practice that allows the client to be communicated with at a really, really simple level. For reasons known only to Google, they don't do that. And as a result, it gets a bit confusing about what the products are and what they do. So what I've done is I made a list of products and what they're currently called in April 2022. And I put that date on it because it will change. And I did try and make a fancy diagram and sort of fit them all in, but it didn't really work. It's not graphic friendly, and I'm not a graphic expert. So I've really just listed them down there. And these are all the products that I think that are relevant at a market trader level. And there are other products like Google Cloud, but that's much more of an enterprise type solution. So the list is long enough. Google My Business we've talked about through Madalen and through SBMS and through QVM ad nauseum, right? We talk about it all the time. It's the most basic product you've got to have along with your QVM listing. They'll even let you build a free website. The only limitation of that free website is that it features and works best on Google products. Not so good on Safari, not so good on DuckDuckGo, not so good on Anthea or any of the other browsers, okay? So you might want to build a separate website, but it is there if you have no website. The other one, G Suite, which used to be called Workspace. What that is that allows you to have Gmail, Sheets, which is Excel, documents, and various other products. And it allows it all to be owned by the business, and the business gets a drive, and all of the documents get stored on the drive. So if you've got employees, everything gets stored in the one place. It also means if someone steals your laptop or you break it or tip a cup of coffee into it, all your documents and everything can be stored in G Suite, which is a commercial application, and you pay about $50 a month per person to use that. So that's just what Workspace used to be called is now called G Suite, but it's really their competitor to Microsoft 365. And if you use Google and you're happy with it and you don't use X stuff like that, then it's a great product. The next one's Google Analytics, and Google Analytics measures traffic that comes to your website. And so it allows you to know what's going on your website, where the traffic's coming from, and how much of that traffic is coming from AdWords. So it's a tool which tells you about the performance of your digital assets, right? After that, we've got AdWords. Some of you are using AdWords, and some of you are not using AdWords. It just depends on what kind of business you've got and where you're up to in terms of your marketing and how much money you've got to spend. But basically, that is an AdWord advertising system that appears in Google searches, in Google results, and on third-party systems. Merchant Center is a bit of a tricky one. Merchant Center is a linking tool. So if you've got a shopping cart like Shopify or any of the others, and you want to link that to the advertising products in Google, then you've got to use Merchant Center, because Merchant Center links your online inventory or your inventory within your words to any advertising campaigns that you run. So it's called Google Merchant Center, and it's how you seamlessly join them up, and it's really good for people like Dorita, who's here today, who's got a lot of product, and she doesn't have the time to load every individual product into the system. So by using Merchant Center, she can suck all the details of her product out of her website and allow those to appear in Google Ads without manually writing everything and manually loading all the images. So it's a really, really important tool. Google Tag Manager is just where you manage all the bits of code that you need to add to your website for all of the other products like Analytics, AdWords, Merchant Center, etc. So when you use a Google product, they often give you a little bit of code, and that code's got to be placed somewhere within your website, and usually use Tag Manager to do that. Okay, so you have to have Analytics and AdWords and Merchant Center in order to know what Tag Manager is and where to use it. If you've got an IT person that works for you and you outsource things, it's really worth knowing and asking them whether they're using Google Tag Manager and getting a copy of access to it. So in case they move, they get a new job. A lot of people who work in technology are young people and they move on, right? Or they have a business doing web for a while because they've got no other job, and then they get a job and you lose contact with them.
That's one of the biggest issues that I find as well is that, there isn't a record of it, there isn't a copy of the tag that's being used, the script, and so the business is just left behind and not sure where to get it, what to do, but at least if they've got it as a record, then they can always put their hand on it as needed and pass it on to the next person.
Yeah, you just need to give it to someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So the last one's Google Search Console, and I was fishing around, so I couldn't remember what it used to be called, and Madalen reminded me this morning it used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. And Google Webmaster Tools and the next one down, Test My Site, are really quite useful tools because for a business leader, they allow you to look at your site and see how it's performing and whether there's anything wrong with it. Okay, so when you look in Search Console, that's how it'll run a test on your site and say this page is wrong, there's an error on this page, there's a broken link on that page. It'll give you a list of things that aren't right with your website, but it'll also tell you, and you can either look at it negatively and say all these things are not good with my website, but it'll also, if you look at it, tell you lots of positive things about your website, like you're in the top 25% for speed, or this is working really well, or that's been completed. But it is a useful tool, the Search Console, especially if your website's been built by someone else or it's a little bit old, to access it and see what it says about your site. And the Test My Site link really relates to how your product performs on tablets and mobiles and how fast it is. One of the key aspects of SEO is site speed, and you can load the URL into the system, and it will test your site for both mobile, tablet, and also for a desktop, and it'll tell you how fast it is, and it'll give you some advice on things that need fixing, and it will tell you where you fit in the range. So it'll say you're in the bottom 10% or the top 10%, and that obviously then gives you some knowledge and information about your site. If your site is slow, Google will punish you, right? If you get a new site built and it's slow, then you get to come back to the developers. So it's a useful kind of link to know about. And if you've got nothing to do and it's Friday afternoon and you're wasting a bit of time and you know that you should be doing some work and you want to find a useful thing to do, go to Test My Site and put your website in there and see what happens. Go to Google Search Console and have a look around, right? Because you're not wasting time and you're not procrastinating, you're actually getting to know something about your digital assets. But it's a kind of interesting thing to do, and it's a useful and quite passive way that you can really engage with your business. The last one is Google Pay. Google Pay is a bit like Apple Pay. It's not hugely used in Australia, but however, a lot of people have turned it on in their phone without knowing they've turned it on, and people have scanned credit cards into their phones without knowing that they've necessarily done that and activated that. So it's quite good for international visitors because quite a lot of them have used it, but also it's just another way in which you can secure a sale if you've got other problems. So have a look at Google Pay and see if it's something that you need to make changes to adapt in your business. I think as the traffic picks up and as more tourists come back, especially as international visitors come back, we might see a bit of an uptick in the use of Google Pay because people have done much more Google shopping, and so many of them have ended up with their credit card stored in their phone. So it is something worthwhile. Now there are more elements to the Google ecosphere, but these are just the ones that, if you're going to look at any of them, these are the ones you should be aware of as a small business. And obviously if you don't advertise, then don't worry about Google AdWords. And if you don't want to really do that kind of payment, don't worry about Google Pay. But the basic ones are all there. And Search Console, Tag Manager, Analytics, Merchant Center, Google My Business, they're the ones that I really start out with. So again, if there's any questions about that, we can either take them now or we can take them at the end. Just indicate to Madalen if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll pause at the end to see if there's any questions about that. Now, the second topic, or the third topic, sorry, that I wanted to talk about was a little bit trying to break up that definition between SEO and social media marketing, because it all gets blended into one, and it can turn into a bit of nonsense. So the link, which is wonky on the site, I noticed, now I've lifted it up, it was nice and central not so long ago. It's basically called the 9 differences between social media and SEO. And when you look at it, you'll go, oh, wow, 2017. That means it was written when the iPhone 6 was around. We've probably had about 5 prime ministers since then. And, the world, we've had COVID and the world has changed, right? But the reason that this piece of work that was produced by someone called Orbit Media is still there, and that it still turns up in search results, is it's good, right? That's why does something from 2017 survive? It survives because it's useful. I like it because it's a little bit simple, and the world has got a lot more complicated in this particular topic since 2017. But if your knowledge isn't great, it's a fantastic place to start, right? So all it is really just a way to split up just to separate the two, just so you know they're two separate and different, distinct activities. So yes, it's 2017. Yes, I still like it, but I was alive when St Kilda won a flag, so that tells you that's what I think is old. 2017 seems quite recent still. So before we start, what do they mean by that, right? So effectively, they start the article by just breaking down the 2 definitions, right? And SEO they say, is about being discovered through traffic, through searches. So it's really the top of the funnel. People are searching for something, and then it's up to the business to draw them down all the way to get a sale, right? With social media, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to build a connection, okay? You're trying to get traffic, you're trying to get engagement. So when we do search, we're generally trying to solve a problem. When we do social media marketing, we're generally trying to reach out and to either existing clients or new clients or people who might be out there on social media that we want to say, hey, we exist. We're a brand. We're at the Vic Market. Why don't you come and visit us? This is what we do. We've got a bit of a personality. So one is really about traffic through search engine ranking to get them to the point whereby they can make a decision. And the other one really is about rapport, brand, connection, and then hopefully getting a sale from it. So they like to say they come in at different tops of the funnel, but their objective is both the same, right? Their objective is down the bottom. You want a lead or you want a customer. Yeah. And how do we do that? We rank well in Google so people can be aware of the product or service that we offer, or we publish the fact that we exist as a business and what we sell and what we do, and our expertise and professionalism, so that when people are ready to consider something, that they're further down the funnel and they choose us as a first port of call. So if we had someone there before, we need to keep reminding them that we're there. And the best way to remind them is EDMs followed by social media. EDMs just means email. Those are the 2 things that work depending on your demographic. If we're looking for a new client, then if we can solve a problem, then often SEO is more effective as a methodology. So an interesting way is to look at audience and intent. What's the mindset, right? With social media, we know a lot about the people, but very little about what they're thinking, right? They're just clicking around the internet. But social media discloses an awful lot about people. Oh, he's married, she's married. Oh, they've got kids. Oh, they live here. They went to this school. They've got a boat. There's all huge amounts of information that are available on social media. When we look at SEO, we know what people are thinking about. We don't know anything about them. We know that they're looking for a natural cure for eczema because they've clicked on Petal in String Bean Alley and she's got a soothing balm or a beauty treatment for people who've got, his skin's cracked, right? And so we know what they're thinking about. They're thinking about a beauty product, or they're thinking about a health product, or they're thinking about buying Ugg boots, or they're thinking about a gift, or they're looking for, a particular kind of French cheese, but we don't really know anything about them. So that's the two differences between the audience and the intent when we compare social media and SEO as kind of products. So because of that, what they do works differently, right? Social media works on what's now, what's trending, what's interesting, what's emotional. Yep. Search engine optimization works best on solving a problem. Yep. And it's generally good SEO lasts for years and years and years, right? So good SEO is something that solves a problem, provides information, and invites people to click through a link in order to become a customer. So how-to instructions are really good. Any kind of problem solution marketing is really good. Any kind of scarcity marketing is best done on things like social media because it's immediate and don't miss out. So there's two different ways in which they work, right? So when you break that down further, obviously when we look at social media, images, videos, something that's short term, something that's punchy, something that is humorous, or something that makes people angry, or the emotions that it stirs up can be good and be bad, right? But obviously from a marketing point of view, what works for us is generally positive messages. But social media itself often works through quite a negative cycle as well as quite a positive cycle. But it's generally visual, sound, and movement. When we look at SEO, it's text. Yep. And you'll know that because Google have gone to the extent where they publish a guideline on text. And I put the link in here. And also the fact that the Wikipedia articles always appear in Google search results. So Google looks at text, right? It's a text-based format. And there's long bits of text and the short bits of text. The other thing it looks at is engineering. So search engine optimization looks at the structure of your website. Does it have a header? Does it have a footer? Have you got links to social media? Do all your pages have titles? Are there links internally from one product to another in different parts of the site? Have you got a main header on a page and some subheaders? Have you used bold and italics to tell Google what's important? Have you got meta tags, filled out? Are your images, those images have titles and alt tags? So search engine optimization looks at the text content on the page and also the engineering. Social media looks at, wow, this is funny, it's interesting, it's spreadable, it creates an emotion, and how many people are going to share it. So the metrics are different and the content that appears is also different. So, but they do feed into each other. If you have a lot of social activity, Google have never said we use social media activity as a part of the SEO ranking, right? But everyone has accepted that they do use it as some kind of indicator, but we don't know how. It's actually not known. People might tell you they know how it works, but actually the reality is that they haven't divulged it. It's not written down. So the consequence of that is what is quick and what is, not quick. Search engine optimization is slow. So if you've got something you want to get rid of by the end of the week, right, optimizing a page isn't going to work for you, right? Writing a long form article about something that's scarce, that's ending in a week isn't really going to work for you. Social media will get you an instant response, but SEO will get you a long-term response. And so if you've got recurrent events like Christmas sales, autumn sales, end of financial year sales, footy's back type sales, Melbourne Fashion Week type sales, you can set up pages that will optimize for years and years and years. So SEO is slow and it's only as good as you getting the terms right that people are looking for. So it sometimes takes a little bit of work. So quick versus slow, right? The thing about SEO is once it's optimized, it takes very little maintenance. Social media, you've got to work at it because once the day's done, it's yesterday's news. So they've got different kinds of resourcing requirements and they show results in different kinds of time periods. At the end of the article, there's a nice little graphic, right? And I won't read it out, but it just tells you basically when you're thinking about social media or search, what are the two key differences? And I really like the way that they've put that out there. I don't necessarily agree with the readers are bored. I think they're just on social media, and it used to be that they were bored and they were on social media, but now people, I think, are on social media out of choice for recreation, which is perhaps a view that's changed since 2017. So I think that's a tiny bit patronising, but yeah, I think it's a good summary. Now, I've whizzed through literally as fast as I can 4 out of the 9 reasons. So I'm not going to cover all of the other reasons that are there, right? Because it's not relevant to everyone. But I have put the link down to the Orbit Media blog in here so you can go away and have a read of the other parts of the articles. Because otherwise I'm just really regurgitating someone else's product. It is a good read, and it does help with your education as a business leader as to what sort of activities work in what kind of zones. The only thing I'd say that's changed really between 2017 and now is that social media have made up a lot of ground on search. They do their own ad campaigns now. They've got their own marketplace with Instagram and Facebook. They've built really good connectivity between things like Shopify and the web, and Shopify and social media, or Cart and BigCommerce and things like that. So it is, it was written in 2017, and like I said, I think social media has made in terms of their integration into whole marketing systems, have made a lot of progress in that particular time. But it's still a good place, especially if you're trying to find your feet as a small business, and especially if you're going to talk to people who are offering you services about SEO and services about social media marketing. It's good to have a bit of a read of it so you can tell whether you're being snowballed or not. Your responsibility is to make decisions about your money, and if it's well spent. And sometimes that's a little bit tricky when we talk about social media, because as business people, we're not necessarily that well educated when it comes down to fine details. So that is really me done on that. A little bit about the Google ecosphere, a little bit about the difference between social and SEO, and like I said, the article is good, and a little bit about how to use the Trader Bulletin to generate some content, and a reminder that you can schedule content. You don't have to look at it every week. If it's not something you enjoy doing, just put an hour aside and pump it out and schedule it, and just put your 5 posts a day out. 3 posts about general things, and 3 posts about products and services. That'll be a perfect balance. That's a 50-50 mix.
Yeah, that's where the media plan comes in very handy. It's good to draft something up so that either a Word document or an Excel sheet that with a timeline on it, so that you know what you're going to be posting in the upcoming months. Just keep adding to it, or even even if it's just for the next 2 weeks ahead. So long as you do a little bit of planning and using the content that you get for free out of the Trader Bulletin. I mean, there's posts that you don't even have to think about, basically, or content that you don't need to think about as far as posting. Peter, once again, a great presentation. Now, if anyone, we'll take questions now if you have any, but if you go away and you start to think, I could have asked about this, or I've got another question after this webinar, then just email me, and in the next session we can address those questions. And maybe if there's something that you're uncertain about, maybe we can spend a little bit more in depth. Now, that might be about writing articles, or how to use SEO in a H1 tag or a H2 tag, and something like that. So yes, I'd like to remind everyone as well that SBMS has a temporary pop-up in FShared where you can drop by and ask questions or organise a meeting with a mentor on duty. Now, the mentor on duty roster is on the window, and, you know, if you pop by and the mentor isn't there, there is a number to contact, and if you call that number, then we'll ask the mentor to go back to the pop-up, because they'll be not only on site, but they'll also be walking around talking to traders as well. So on that note, Peter, I thank you once again for a great presentation and excellent advice. And are there any questions? All right, well, on that note, we'll stop the meeting. And again, thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next month.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Madalen.
Okay, bye, everyone.